So the question might come up in people's minds as you're kind of talking about machine learning and mastery learning and every student right help at the right time and everyone working at the right level just for them is this the future of the classroom? And this is something we always think about ourselves is this the kind of classroom that we want in the future? And are we kind of helping our model where students are in their booth, they've got their computer in front of them, maybe they've got their headset on and they're watching just the perfect video for them and they're doing the perfect question for them and they're getting the right help for them. And I think Brendan asked a really good question about how much of the teaching is done in Mathspace and how much is actually explicit teaching, how much is what's the teacher's role in there. And that's always been the way that we've thought about it is we don't want it to become like this. And that's not the idea. There's so much value in having a community of learners, and there's so much value in the teachers' input as they go through. And really the point is to try and give teachers the data to make the most of their classroom time together as a class. So with that, this is kind of one of the things that we've been really thinking about. So it's offline matters a lot. This is the last thing we want to do, and we've probably seen this ever in the pandemic last year, where everyone kind of saw a lot of the benefits of personalized learning, a lot of the benefits of students kind of owning their own learning, but they also saw a lot of the negatives associated with that as well. So offline matters a lot. It matters for accessibility, it matters for equity, for everybody having access to the right learning. It matters for collaborative problem solving, the kinds of the future mathematicians that we want to build, for the future jobs that we want to build. It matters for teacher-led inquiry, for creativity, for working on deeper mathematics beyond just what a Mathspace or a computer can grade. A lot of the questions that we can kind of ask in Mathspace are the ones that we can grade. It matters a lot for motivation, to be working inside a classroom with your peers, trying to solve a problem together. These are all kind of really important parts of what the mathematics classroom should look like. And for us, it matters for being the right help at the right time for every student. So, which is our mission. So one of the things that we launched last year was these offline worksheets as a real stepping stone towards, hey, don't do all of your work on Mathspace. As more and more schools are adopting Mathspace as their core resource, we were concerned about people doing all their work on Mathspace. And I know Sally mentioned earlier that she really makes a point of there's pen and paper time for doing work on paper. So we introduced this as a feature inside Mathspace to really take a step in that direction. And then we kind of started thinking, okay, what's the next step? That's great. We can ask. The thing about worksheets is not just that, it's pen and paper, but we can also have a Mathspace environment and we need to grade it. Often we have to kind of scaffold it to make sure that students enter their answer in a particular way. And when we don't do that, what we found is the more open we make a problem in Mathspace, often the more frustration it gives students because, hey, do I enter it this way? Do I enter it that way? So we ended up having to scaffold these questions, and we thought that's not what we really want. So in the worksheets, we ask a lot more open-ended problems where you decide how you're going to write it in your own way. You can doodle something on the page, those kinds of open problems. But the next step for us was, have I lost the screen here? Oops. There we go. Is these engage activities. So how do we go beyond just working on open-ended problems to something that's going to engage the students? So we spent a lot of time over the last 12 months or more, really working on these. And the question we ask ourselves is, how do we build intrinsic motivation and equitable learning environments? So we started with these 4 beliefs. All students must develop a positive mathematical identity that allows them to view themselves as learners and doers of mathematics. Again, something that Sally and Sam touched on in their presentations. The classroom structures should emphasize an inclusive mathematics community. And again, Sally mentioned how nobody knows who's in the extension class and who's in the behind class with the tasks. This, a belief of ours is that we have this inclusive mathematics community. A personalized learning approach should aim to offer learning experiences that customize to individuals' unique needs, but also fostering connections to a larger community of learners. And then finally, technology should support, enhance, and transform, but not replace the role of the teacher in the classroom. So based on these are core principles as we look to build these engage activities. And then we added these 6 extra design principles. So multiple representations, particularly visual, helping students rise to high expectations and expecting students to be resources for one another. So how do we make this genuine group work? Creating that safe space. So we're posing questions that have negotiable answers. So particularly students who might be behind in mathematics, how do we kind of ask these questions in a way where they don't feel like they're being judged or they're wrong and they feel like they're safe to contribute? Avoiding new terminology, so starting with conceptual understanding and then formalizing terminology later. Providing opportunities for creativity and play, and then finally English language learners and students with disabilities, so adaptations in the teacher notes to help them engage students who might be English language learners or have these disabilities. Okay, so that the result was these engage tasks, and that are rich and open. They're low floor, high ceiling, and grade level can engage to some extent. They're group worthy, so you want to be solving these as a group, and they're contextually appropriate. So the way these engage activities work is we start with a hook. Then there's the launch phase where the teacher sets up the problem. Then there's the explore phase where students work in group structures to work on the problem. And finally, there's a discussion stage where the teacher facilitates the presentation and consolidation phase. So best way to kind of summarize all that is just maybe look at one example. So here's an example of a walkathon. So these will be sprinkled throughout the Mathspace textbook as opportunities for teachers within their class, not just to go through direct instruction and doing the practice on Mathspace and filling in your gaps or waypoints, all those things, but also something where it's more collaborative group task. So here we have Clara and Felipe raised money for a charity in a walkathon. The amount that Felipe raised after walking 6 miles is shown here. So this is a task to introduce them to linear equations. And since this is the opener, what mathematical questions could we ask about this graph? This is the low floor, high ceiling, inclusive. There's no right or wrong answers. What kind of questions can you come up with? Even if you're not ready to learn linear equations, you should be in a good position to contribute to class discussion. And really just, this is the kind of thing that we want to build, that intrinsic motivation. Then we move on to the launch. So today you and your partner will be writing and graphing a linear function that models the earnings from a walkathon to meet a specific fundraising goal. And so here is to start, think about what information is needed to accomplish today's task. And here the teacher works as a facilitator. And these are all accompanied with detailed teacher lesson plans. So with prompts that the teacher can ask on each of the slides to help students generate that thinking where they need help. The next stage is to form groups. So in this case, it's going to be working in pairs. So like I mentioned before, this is really trying to create these group-worthy tasks and have that mathematical discourse and discussion happening with students. So, and then you enter your partner's name. And here we dive into the meat of the question, the exploring phase. So their goal is to raise $120. Clara raised $10 per mile. This, you can tell, was built for our US curriculum initially. So we're launching this in the US this year and in Australia next year. So the mile reference will change to kilometers, so not to confuse the students. But also had an initial donation of $30. So, we can start to think about the y-intercept. Where does that start? The amount Felipe raised after walking 6 miles is shown here. So one is written as a sentence, one is given as a graph. And then this is the task, to create a graph with the following features. And again, it's quite open in terms of how you do it. And you're using your graph to determine the following. As students work on this, they'll be able to, this is offline, open, doodle on a page, write anywhere, use OneNote, use whatever it is. And then you can take a photo of your work and upload it to your space. So the idea here is not to do this online, it's to really be creative and do it wherever. And then you can upload that. If you've done it on OneNote, you can upload the file. If you've done it on pen and paper, you can take a photo and use a QR code basically to upload it to the screen. And this is what we're hoping to do out of this is two things. One is make the work visible to teachers, so teachers can view that work really quickly if they wanted to. But two, it's for students to build this portfolio of actually engaging with the mathematics. So they start to see themselves as mathematics is not just solving an equation, but mathematics is this active process that you're involved with, and they see themselves as a doer and a learner of mathematics rather than just a receiver of mathematical knowledge. Okay, and then the next step, the meat of it, is you and your partner decide to participate in a walkathon too, and we give here student choice. And this is one of the most important parts of developing student motivation, is to give them some agency. So we have these 4 scenarios. Pick the scenario that you are most interested in, and your task is to write a graph, a linear function that represents how far you would be from your goal at different points during the walkathon. So after you've walked 2 miles or kilometers, how much have you raised? 3 miles, and start to put that into a graph. So really get to explore that as a student. And again, upload a photo of your work so that you have that digital portfolio. And then finally, it's time to present some of your ideas to the class. So get people together, get them to present, and reviews and walks around the classroom. They might say, I really want to promote the voice of this student who's done some awesome work, but they're really quiet in the classroom. I love what they've done. You maybe have worked with them, and then you say, okay, I'd love for you to present that to the class. So really thinking of mathematics beyond just, again, answering questions in a digital platform. And then finally, how do you feel after completing this activity? And this comes back to the teacher, so the teachers can get a bit of a sense of, was it a failure? Do people feel good? Do people feel like they're ready to move on to the next step? And we'll present this to the teacher in a report that lets them see how people think they went on it, whether they found it confusing, interesting, what they want to do next, etc. All right, I'm going to stop there. But yeah, I guess one of the interesting things with this is, what's exciting is we're taking this really holistic view of what the mathematics classroom should look like. And we don't want it to be something that's only students in grade 8 work on grade level work. We've introduced waypoints as an idea of, well, students should work on what's best for them. How do we get them to work on grade level work? Because they're in grade 8, they can work with their peers, but then how can we use waypoints to kind of fill that up? And then how do we build that engagement in the classroom with something beyond just your answering questions? And so can't wait to release these next year, and they'll be sprinkled throughout. There'll be, for every topic, there might be 1 or 2 of these engage activities. Teachers can have a look at it and say, I think that one will work really well with my class, and they can work it into their classroom structures, so that we're not just a dry subject that's kind of like answering those questions, and we're certainly not this, taking mastery learning to the extreme, where it's everybody, like, where there's no community anymore, because you're at grade 4, you just go put your headset on and go work on grade 4 content. You're at grade 7, you work on grade 7. You're at grade 8, you work on grade 8. We want to keep okay, you're in grade 8, you're part of a community of learners who are learning grade 8 work, but then you have these extra tools where in your own time, you can go on waypoints, fill in those gaps, and you have this motivation to do so, because mathematics is deeper and richer than just, answer a bunch of questions that until you master grade 7. Like, why do I want to master grade 7? Well, you get that exposure to, like, there's great things inside mathematics. All right, I know I've talked the house down and we're over, but if anyone has any thoughts or questions, I'm happy to hang around in the next 15 minutes. I'm sitting around in Melbourne and a bit scared to leave the hotel with COVID, so I'm around and happy to chat to anyone who wants to find out more.
Yeah, if there's any last questions, feel free to unmute your microphone or write it in the chat box. I might just give you maybe 20 seconds to do that. I think we're good. So Craig's actually had to jump off, so I'm going to wrap things up. Thank you everyone for coming along today and being very flexible. I know we were supposed to all do this in person in Haileybury, but of course, with everything that's going on at the moment, we had to transition to the webinar format. So I especially would like to thank Sally and Sam for taking time out of their busy lives as maths teachers to deliver those presentations on how they're using Mathspace and waypoints in the classroom. So like a little virtual clap from everybody. So yeah, thanks so much for the both of you. We really appreciate it. And, I think a lot of the schools that use Mathspace and those who are still exploring, they really find it valuable when teachers like yourself do take the time to kind of share your expertise. So for everyone who's here today, we will contact you all via email. We'll share with you a recording of today's webinar. And for anyone who's interested in trialing waypoints, it could be a new school, or it could be a school using Mathspace only. There is that link that we shared earlier, but we'll send that to you via email as well. And yeah, you don't actually need any PD with us. You can just jump in and start using it straight away through the free trial sign up. So we'll send those resources to you all. Thanks very much for coming. And thank you, Mo, as well, for coming to Melbourne. Sad we couldn't see you in person today. But yeah, thanks for taking time out of your schedule as well.